it's Caitlin from C-SPAN. Did you know that C-SPAN has been serving the American people for 45 years? Since our founding in 1979, C-SPAN has been documenting history with a unique approach, unfiltered, without commentary, and entirely independent from government funding. C-SPAN is funded by fees from our cable and satellite distribution partners. And now, with fewer people subscribing to cable and satellite, we're asking you to help support our next 45. Your contribution helps to ensure that we can continue to provide unfiltered, complete coverage of government proceedings on TV, online, on radio, and our mobile app, as well as context through newsletters, social media, and podcasts. Join us in preserving this legacy of access to the democratic process. Make your tax-deductible donation today at cspan.org/donate. Thank you.
This week, 2024 Campaign Trail takes you on the road with former President Trump, who was in Ohio, stumping for Senate candidate Bernie Moreno, and with President Biden, as he headed for campaign stops in Nevada and Arizona. Also, a look at the latest delegate counts and ads. But first, a preview of the U.S. Senate race in Wisconsin, considered a critical must-win for both President Biden and former President Trump.
Jessie Opoyan is a political reporter with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin is the incumbent, and she's running for what would be a third term. When are voters heading to the polls in your state, and who's running against her?
So the Republican primary will be in August. Thus far, there's just one high-profile Republican candidate in the race. That's Eric Hovde. He's a banking mogul. Raised in Madison. He's got some business ties out in California. Already spending a lot on the race, a lot of ads on the air. Possibly more challengers coming in, but right now it's just Eric Hovde and Tammy Baldwin.
And what is it looking like, her prospects for another term?
Well, Tammy Baldwin's been a traditionally very strong candidate here in Wisconsin, where our races are kind of decided on razor-thin margins, but she actually won her second-term reelection in 2018 with an 11-point margin, which is basically unheard of here in Wisconsin. So she's a traditionally strong candidate. She's been fundraising. She's been out on the trail. If you talk to any Republican strategist here, they'll tell you not to underestimate her. That being said, I think Democrats throughout the country are concerned and about, the economy, about Joe Biden's approval ratings. And so it certainly will be a tough challenge for her. If Eric Hovde is the candidate, he's poised to spend as much as $20 million of his own money on the race. So, he'll be a formidable opponent. What
about fundraising for her part? How is she doing?
She's been doing well. She's been bringing in pretty consistently $3.5 million a quarter. We'll certainly see national groups spending on her behalf as well.
What issues do voters in Wisconsin care about?
Well, it's going to remain to be seen how much abortion remains to be an issue here. It certainly was an important issue in our most recent state Supreme Court election. But the economy is certainly an issue here. People are concerned about inflation, grocery prices, kind of the bread and butter kitchen table issues.
Explain how Wisconsin sends a Tammy Baldwin on the left to the U.S. Senate and a Ron Johnson on the right.
We are a very unique state, that's for sure. We're a state that's responsible for the two of them, for electing, Scott Walker and Barack Obama in the same year, for Robert La Follette and Joseph McCarthy. So we've got a strong history of really diametrically opposed candidates being equally successful. We're a purple state. We're really evenly split. And voters care a lot more about the candidate than the party here.
Where do you watch on election night when it's statewide of the sort of the red areas and the blue areas that make the state, when combined, purple?
Milwaukee is a strong area for Democrats. Dane County, where I am in Madison, is quickly growing, and it's been just a powerhouse turnout for Democrats in recent elections. And then we've got, more suburban areas throughout the state, rural areas that have been, up for grabs, potentially strong for Republicans.
What other races should voters be watching in Wisconsin or ballot measures this year?
Well, we're going to have new legislative maps that are going to be potentially a lot more competitive than they have been previously. So our entire statewide election is going to be interesting to watch. We've also got a couple of ballot measures, one in particular that's drawn a lot of attention that would ban the use of private grant funding in elections. So it's been referred to as the Zuckerbucks referendum. But, we had a lot of cities here receive support from the group that Mark Zuckerberg funds to help them run the election during the pandemic. So this would ban that if voters choose to amend the Constitution to do that.
Jessie Opoyan, the political reporter for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tuesday brought results from 5 more primary states: Arizona, Illinois, Kansas, Ohio, and Florida. Republican presumptive nominee and former President Donald Trump notched his delegate count for this summer's Republican National Convention to 1,639. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, President Biden had 2,491 delegates, with 20 uncommitted. After numerous visits along the East Coast in recent weeks, President Biden took his re-election campaign out west in recent days. Next, some of his stops in Nevada and Arizona.
Look, the bottom line is, when you think about it, all of us in this room have one fundamental difference between us and Trump. I mean it sincerely. We have a different value set. It gets, to me, I've been campaigning around the country and been in this job for 3 years, and it makes it, the more I thought about it, it's just fundamentally different. You mentioned vets. Well, this is a guy who said when he wouldn't go up to visit a cemetery of veterans that they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was one of those losers and suckers. It's just, I've never heard a president say the things that this guy has said. But the difference is he means them. He means what he says. With your help, we got elected the first time around. And this county and this state is really, really, really critical. Number two, my campaign manager here, she's had enough. She doesn't like all that noise either. Look, last week Donald Trump and I clinched the nominations. We're going to beat him again. And folks, we're going to keep making the case for second term by lowering the cost and creating more jobs. We have grassroots support. So far this campaign, we've had more than 1,300,000 people have contributed under $200 to us. 1,300,000, and 500,000 of those people are brand new from before. And so,
just move on up toward your destination. Though you may find from time to time complication.
From the Arena Indian Sports Colony.
Indian Nations.
Yes. Welcome to our land. Thank you for putting all the cabinets at high level.
We have the most representative cabinet in American history. And by the way, you kind of like our Secretary of Interior, don't you?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
She's pretty good. I want to provide an annual tax credit that will give Americans $400 a month for the next 2 years as mortgage rates come down, to put toward their mortgage when they buy their first home or trade up for a little more space if they come from a middle-class background. They come from a family that has well under $200,000 or less. We're also making it more affordable to refinance your home by eliminating title insurance fees on federally funded mortgage-backed mortgages. That's going to save folks as much as $1,500. The federal government can afford to do that. In addition, last week, the National Association of Realtors agreed for the first time that Americans can negotiate lower commissions when they buy or sell their home. On a typical home purchase, that alone could save folks an average of $10,000 on the sale or purchase. I'm calling on realtors to follow through on lowering their commissions to protect home buyers. And folks, we're also working to end the legacy of discrimination on the basis of home valuations. It's exacerbated, as you know, it's exacerbated a racial wealth gap. In 2020, 55 of the largest Fortune 500 companies made $40 billion in profits. They paid zero in federal taxes. Not anymore. Thanks to the law I wrote and we signed, big companies now have to pay a minimum of 15%, but that's still too little to have to pay in federal. Wouldn't you all trade that? No billionaire should pay a lower tax than a teacher, a sanitation worker, a nurse, anybody busting their neck. And that's why I'm proposing, if I'm reelected, we're going to get it done. A minimum tax of 25% for billionaires. That's not even the highest tax rate, just 25%. You know how much that would raise over 10 years? $500 billion in 10 years. $500 billion if they just started to pay that. Folks, there's so much we could do. But my predecessor has a totally different view when it comes to fair taxes. He said, and he said this to his friends in Mar-a-Lago, quote, it's on the record, "I know plenty of you," this is his quote, "you're rich as hell, and we're going to give you tax cuts." That's what he says out loud. When the president enacted a $2 trillion tax cut that overwhelmingly benefits the very wealthy and biggest corporations, he exploded the federal deficit, as I said. He added more to the national debt than any president has in one term in all of American history. And he wants to do it again. He's committed to another $2 trillion tax cut for the wealthy and biggest corporations. He also proposed cutting funds for affordable housing, not building them, cutting the funds for them. Folks at home, does anybody really think the tax code is fair? I don't know. You don't really think the wealthy and big corporations need another $2 trillion tax cut, do you? Well, they're doing pretty well. I sure in hell don't. I've never been more, we have a lot more to do. A lot more to do. The reason this election is so important is not about me, it's about the future. It's about the future. He wants to undo every single thing we've done if he gets elected. He stated it straight up. But there's so much more to keep and to do. I've never been more optimistic about our future. You just have to remember who in hell we are. We're the United States of America. There is nothing, I mean, think about it, nothing beyond our capacity when we work together. We're the only nation in the world that's come out of every crisis stronger than we went in, every time when we work together. And with your help, we're going to get people working together in a way they haven't for decades. So, ladies and gentlemen, God bless you, and may God protect our troops. Let's get this done.
Former President Donald Trump, now this year's presumptive Republican presidential nominee, went to Ohio last Saturday in hopes of boosting the campaign of U.S. Senate hopeful Bernie Moreno. He made headlines for some of these comments, which included him predicting a, quote, bloodbath if he didn't win election this year. Mr. Trump's campaign later said the comments were taken out of context by journalists, saying the former president was referring to the domestic auto industry. Next, a portion of those comments from the Ohio rally.
Well, thank you very much. And you see the spirit from the hostages, and that's what they are, as hostages. They've been treated terribly and very unfairly, and you know that, and everybody knows that. And we're going to be working on that soon as the first day we get into office. We're going to save our country, and we're going to work with the people to treat those unbelievable patriots, and they were unbelievable patriots and are. You see the spirit, just cheering, they're cheering while they're doing that, and they did that in prison, and it's a disgrace, in my opinion. In 2016, one of the biggest issues was the border, and I sort of won on the border, I guess, maybe, and we fixed the border. We fixed it so good that I couldn't even use it in 2020, even though we got millions and millions more votes in 2020. But we couldn't even talk about it. I'd say, I want to talk about the border. Tell them what a good job. They said, sir, you fixed it. Nobody cares. That border was a tiny fraction of what this border is. This is the worst border in the history of the world. There's never been anything. Millions and millions of people are pouring into our country. They're sending from all over the world, not just South America, Latin America. They're sending them from Asia. They're sending them from Africa, the Congo. Last night, 22 people arrived from the Congo. Now, the Congo is a very nice place, I would imagine. But they arrived from the Congo, and they came from prison. Where are you from in the Congo? What's your address? Prison. Now, these are rough people. They're coming from Africa. They're coming from Asia. They're coming from the Middle East. They're coming from Yemen, all over the place from Yemen. I thought we were bombing Yemen. Here we go with the bombing again. You could solve that whole problem with a phone call if they respected you. But I would do the same thing if I had prisons that were teeming with MS-13 and all sorts of people that they've got to take care of for the next 50 years, right? Young people, they're in jail for years, if you call them people. I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion, but I'm not allowed to say that because the radical left says that's a terrible thing to say. They say you have to vote against him because did you hear what he said about humanity? I've seen the humanity, and these are bad. These are animals, okay? And no one has been hurt by Joe Biden's migrant invasion more than our great African-American and Hispanic-American communities. You know that, right? Because they're taking your jobs and they're creating lots of problems. And remember this, Joe Biden is a great threat to our democracy. He's a tremendous threat to our democracy. His incompetence is the number one reason. Also, he uses the Justice Department, the FBI, to go after his political opponent. Happens to be me. How are we doing? And he's driven my numbers through the roof. Do it one or two more times. How about a couple of more indictments, Joe, you dumb son of a... dumb son of a... But if you look at the United Auto Workers, what they've done to their people is horrible. They want to do this all-electric nonsense where the cars don't go far, they cost too much, and they're all made in China. And the head of the United Auto Workers never probably shook hands with a Republican before. They're destroying. You know, Mexico has taken over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it. Went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. No, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
Mr. Trump's remarks drew rebukes from Democrats, as well as his former Vice President, Mike Pence. The next day, he told CBS's Face the Nation he wouldn't be endorsing former President Trump's 2024 bid.
You know, after a lot of prayer and reflection, I've come to the conclusion that I won't be endorsing Donald Trump this year. I mean, look, I'm very proud of the record of our administration, Margaret. It was a record that left America more prosperous and more secure, and our liberties and the sanctity of life stronger than ever before in my lifetime.
But you've said Mr. Trump's walked away from conservative
principles.
Well,
I do. I said it during my presidential campaign. The president and I have profound differences. And many people think it's just over January 6th. And frankly, the fact that the president continues to insist that I had the right to overturn the election that day is a fundamental difference. But I want to be clear that, I've forgiven the president in my heart for what happened that day. As a Christian, I'm required to do that. I've prayed for him in that regard. But the issue of fealty to the Constitution is not a small matter, but it's not just that. I mean, the reason that I cannot in good conscience endorse Donald Trump this year also has to do with the fact that he is walking away not just from keeping faith with the Constitution on that day, but also, Margaret, with a commitment to fiscal responsibility, a commitment to the sanctity of life, a commitment to American leadership in the world. I mean, the president's reversal just in the last week on TikTok, following an administration where we literally changed the national consensus on China, is the reason why after a lot of reflection, I just concluded I cannot endorse the agenda that Donald Trump is carrying into this national debate.
Is that the final word from you? Can you be persuaded, if he changes tax, to vote for him? Would you vote for him?
I won't be endorsing Donald Trump this year. But look, I want to be clear.
But would you vote for him?
I respect the right of Republican voters who've made it clear who they're for, who they want to be our standard bearer this year. What I'm going to focus my energies on is in what remains of this year on what we should be for. Because I joined this party when I was in college because I heard the voice and the values of another good Irishman named Ronald Reagan, who said that we need to have a strong national defense, but also recognize we're leader of the free world, that we need to stand for traditional values, the sanctity of life. We need to stand for the Constitution and limited government. And in the balance of this year and in the years ahead, I'm just going to continue to champion those values that I think are not just good for the Republican Party, Margaret, but I think that they are the right policies for a stronger, more prosperous America.
While former President Trump was casting his own ballot in Florida's GOP presidential primary on Tuesday, he had this to say about former Vice President Pence's remarks.
Oh, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less. We need patriots. We need strong people in our country. Our country's going downhill very fast, very rapidly. Millions of people coming across the border, coming from jails, from prisons, coming from mental institutions and insane asylums, terrorists. We need strong people in this country. We don't need weak people.
Former President Trump's remarks in Ohio didn't harm the race of the candidate he was endorsing. 3 days later, Bernie Moreno went on to win Ohio's Republican Senate primary by 18 points. Next, some of his victory remarks on Tuesday night.
I also want to thank President Trump. I just got off the phone with President Trump. And, you know, the reality is we have an opportunity now. We have an opportunity now to retire the old commie and send them to retirement home and then save this country. Because that's what we're going to do. And I want to thank President Trump for all he did for me, for this campaign, for his unwavering support, for his love of this country. Because I don't think I've ever seen somebody who loves this country the way he does. So thank you to President Trump. So one of the things that came up during this campaign I want to address is this idea that Chuck Schumer put some money in to help me. And if helping me means running really mean and horrible ads about me, but one of the things that people say, well, yeah, but he said that you were tied to Trump. Well, let me just say something. I wear with honor my endorsement from President Trump. I wear that with a badge of honor. Because under President Trump, this nation was safer, it was more secure, we had prosperity around the world, we had generationally low interest rates, and we had generationally low inflation. Under Joe Biden, everything is objectively worse. Here's what I wonder. I wonder whether Sherrod Brown is going to wear with honor his 99% voting record with Joe Biden. Whether Joe Biden is the kind of person that he likes to associate with, because I would predict this. If Joe Biden enters Ohio, Sherrod Brown's going to fly out of here like a scared cat. Look, right? Here's a message I want to leave all of you with. It's March of 2024. Things seem dire in our country today. They're probably going to get a little worse over the next 7 months because you have an administration that is completely controlled by the radicals in their party. There was a time I remember when there were rational Democrats, people who you could work with. Those people may still exist, but they're controlled by the absolute extremists in their party. So for the next 7 months, you're going to see Joe Biden try to recapture that extreme position in order to keep his base. So who knows what they'll do, but it's going to be a tough next 7 months. But here's what I'm going to tell you. I believe this as much as I say I'm standing in front of you right now. We're going to win this race in November. We're going to retake the United States Senate. We're going to have President Trump in the White House.
And here's a look at the results from some of the more interesting U.S. House races from this past Tuesday. In Ohio, Republican Derek Marin, a current member of the State House of Representatives, won the GOP primary for Ohio's 9th Congressional District. He'll now face Democratic Representative Marcy Kaptur in the general election. In Illinois, Congressman Mike Bost survived a challenge in the 12th Congressional District's GOP primary from Darren Bailey, a former gubernatorial candidate who snagged the endorsement of Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Representative Bost won with more than 51%. Democratic Congressman Danny Davis also beat primary challengers Melissa Conyers Ervin and Keena Collins. Both women appealed to voters as a new generation of leadership. But the 82-year-old congressman who first won federal office in 1996 won with more than 53%. And in California, Republican Vince Fong will face a runoff in his bid to represent California's 20th congressional district. That's the seat vacated by his former boss and ex-Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Mr. Fong and Tulare County Sheriff Mike Boudreau, both Republicans, now head to a May runoff since neither amassed more than 50% of support in Tuesday's special election. Democratic Congressman Andy Kim of New Jersey made headlines this week as he took his legal challenge to the state Democratic Party's line system to court. He's fighting against a longtime rule, unique to New Jersey, that lists candidates endorsed by county party boards as the official endorsed line for voters. Congressman Kim, who's running against New Jersey First Lady Tammy Murphy in this year's U.S. Senate primary, has charged that system unfairly disadvantages political newcomers. Next, some of the coverage from nonprofit NJ Spotlight News of Congressman Kim's day in court.
New Jersey's county party bosses are potentially on the verge of a massive shift to their power after a marathon hearing on Monday in a federal courtroom in Trenton over the constitutionality of the state's ballot design, more often referred to as the party line system. During 9 hours of oral arguments, lawyers representing Congressman Andy Kim, who brought the lawsuit, and others in support of ending the line, argued it goes against the pursuit of democracy because it gives an unfair advantage to those who are awarded the line, and prospective candidates have dropped their election bids in the past if they didn't secure the endorsement. Kim is locked in a heated primary race against First Lady Tammy Murphy for the U.S. Senate seat currently occupied by embattled senior Senator Bob Menendez. Attorneys for the defendants, which are the 19 counties that use this ballot structure, argued it's just not feasible to change how candidates are grouped on a ballot design before the June election. The court hearing took place as Murphy nabbed her 8th organization line from Gloucester County Democrats, though it may not matter much after the judge issues a ruling. I'm joined now by the man at the center of this lawsuit, Representative Andy Kim. Did you get any indication from the judge how he's leaning after the testimony?
Well, thank you for having me. No indication. He was somebody who was very clear. He wanted to be fair about this and really have a structured process. But I do appreciate the ability for us to be able to make our case and be able to talk about why we think this is unfair and why we think this is unconstitutional. And I was really proud of our team in terms of what we were able to put forward.
You spoke for about an hour, as I understand it. What was the crux of the argument you presented personally?
Well, the crux of the argument is that, this is a system unlike any other system in the United States. 49 other states in America use an office block ballot, a very standard ballot for our elections. New Jersey does not. We're the outlier, and we do it in a way that allows party leaders to give preferential placement to their preferred candidates, and that's just not fair. Organizations, the parties, they can endorse candidates as they would like, but just don't structure that in terms of a ballot line for the elections. And that's what's causing this to be unfair, and that's what we're asking to change.
Meanwhile, Democratic Senator Bob Menendez, the current holder of the office Congressman Kim and Tammy Murphy are seeking, released a 9-minute video saying he wouldn't run again as a Democrat. But he did leave open the door to an independent bid. if he was exonerated on federal charges of bribery related to his former position chairing the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Next, highlights from his video message.
It has been an honor of a lifetime to represent you in the United States Senate. If you told me growing up poor in a tenement in Union City, the son of refugees, the first of my family to go to college, that I could grow up to be one of 100 United States senators in a country of 330 million people, well, I probably wouldn't have believed it. But it is the promise of America fulfilled. It's that history and that promise for the future that I would want to bring to a re-election for the United States Senate. Unfortunately, the present accusations I am facing, of which I am innocent and will prove so, will not allow me to have that type of dialogue and debate with political opponents that have already made it the cornerstone of their campaign. New Jerseyans deserve better than that. You deserve to hear from those who wish to represent you about what they would do for you and your families in the future. Therefore, I will not file for the Democratic primary this June. I am hopeful that my exoneration will take place this summer and allow me to pursue my candidacy as an independent Democrat in the general election. This would allow me the time to not only remind New Jerseyans of how I've succeeded in being your champion, but how we will secure our financial futures, meet the challenges of raising a family, owning a home, provide for a college education, and secure a more peaceful world for all of us to live in. I know many of you are hurt and disappointed in me with the accusations I'm facing. Believe me, I am disappointed at the false accusations as well. All I can ask of you is to withhold judgment until justice takes place. Until then, I will continue to work my heart out each and every day, as I have for the past 19 years, to fight for New Jersey, for you, your family, and a more prosperous, secure future. May God bless you, and may He continue to bless these United States of America.
A reminder, this program and all of C-SPAN's Campaign 2024 coverage can be found online at cspan.org/campaign.